Throughout history, the migration of people from one place to another has often sparked conflicts with those already rooted in the land. The United States holds a dark past of forcibly uprooting native communities and perpetrating violence. The Lakota people's story embodies this narrative. Once flourishing on the Great Plains, their way of life clashed with incoming European settlers, resulting in displacement and hostility. Government actions that led to several conflicts also further deepened their suffering. However, the Lakota's unwavering spirit amid such hardship shines a light on the strength of indigenous groups. And this leaves us with a question. How did the Lakota people shape the history and heritage of the Great Plains region? Welcome to another episode of the Natives' Journals, where we delve into the captivating stories of indigenous cultures from around the world. Today, we journey into the heart of the Lakota people's history, a story that echoes the struggles and triumphs of countless indigenous communities. From their flourishing existence on the Great Plains to the clashes with European settlers and the clashes with European settlers, enduring resilience that emerged in the face of displacement. The Lakota story holds vital lessons for us all. As you watch this video, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to our channel. The Lakota are Native Americans who were part of the Great Sioux Nation, a group that also included the Western and Eastern Dakota tribe. The term Lakota translates to friends or allies, while Sioux is the collective name for these tribes in the Midwest of North America. These people were skilled hunters and were known for their warrior culture. Over time, they faced conflicts not only with other tribes, but also with white settlers encroaching on their land. The Lakota Nation is the conglomeration of several bands known as the Oceti-Sakowin, or the Seven Council Fires. The largest among these council fires is called the Thithongwan, which translates to the people of the plains. The Thithongwan group is split into 7 sub-bands, with the Oglala being the largest among them. The United States government officially recognizes the Oglala as the Oglala Sioux tribe. The Oglala traditionally occupied a large swath of land surrounding the Black Hills area, a sacred site for the Lakota. They boast a long list of great leaders, such as Red Cloud, Bigfoot, Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and American Horse. Historically, the Lakota were nomadic, relying on the sun and stars for guidance during their migrations. While often associated with the Great Plains, their origins were traced to regions such as Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and the Dakota. Originally part of a larger confederacy known as Oceti-Sakowin, they eventually split into different groups like the Nakota, including the Stoney and Assiniboine. The Nakota gradually became rivals to their southern kin, establishing settlements along the upper Saskatchewan and Red Deer rivers through the fur trade. While Nakota migrations divided the Sioux, it was the Ojibwe, Anishinaabe, originating from the Great Lakes, who transformed the Sioux society. In 1650, the Ojibwe moved west for new hunting grounds and nicknamed their rivals Narrow-Wesu, meaning little snakes. French traders mistakenly believed the people's name was shortened for convenience. A common practice back then, referring to enemies as snakes, was typical, symbolizing conflict. The Teton and allies could tolerate a few hunters, but the mass migration threatened their hunting grounds. Sioux fought with superior numbers on home ground, but the Ojibwe had guns from the fur trade, a significant advantage. This expansion came at the expense of those beyond the fur trade frontier, using technology to push others. By the early 1700s, Ojibwe's progress pushed Teton bands from woodlands to the Great Plains. Though harsh, the plains supported a large human population. Survival meant moving between resource-rich areas throughout the year. The Teton relied heavily on buffalo hunting for sustenance. At one point, 60 to 80 million buffalo roamed North America, crucial for prairie inhabitants. In Lakota, buffalo is Tatanka, translating to he who owns us. The buffalo on the plains provided essential sustenance for all the people residing in the area. As the Teton adapted, their dialect and culture transformed into the Lakota we know today. Bound by their new reality, the Great Plains reshaped the Teton way of life. Their Lakota descendants embraced the West's ownership. Survival was relentless on the plains in the 1730s, with an unforgiving climate and the mightiest prey that could kill hunters swiftly. But amidst these trials, the Lakota decoded the grasslands, thriving despite the challenges. A game-changer arrived, the horse brought by the Cheyenne people. Horses quickly spread throughout the western region, bringing about a revolution in buffalo hunting and changing the dynamics of warfare. The horses transformed hunters into warriors, significantly changing the Lakota people's lives. These creatures were obtained through gifts, trade, or raids on rival communities, so prevalent that it turned into a rite of passage, showcasing young men's bravery. The practice of stealing horses allowed them to display trophies, symbolizing their prowess. This shift made the horse pivotal in Lakota warfare. Their warriors, equipped with bows and lances, gained a fearsome reputation throughout the western region. In close combat, they preferred war clubs, made by fastening stone heads to wooden handles using rawhide. The weapon's robustness led to its nickname, the Skullcracker. While the horse brought convenience to the Lakota, it also pushed them further into territories already asserted by other nations. However, expansion to the north was hindered due to alliances between their rivals and the Iron Confederacy. To the east, the Blackfoot Confederacy controlled the land by the Canadian Rockies. The Missouri River was guarded by the Arikara, while the Lakota's main competitors were the inhabitants of the Black Hills, sparking a battle for control. The Arikara settled there first, followed by the Pawnee, Arapaho, Crow, and Kiowa, creating a complex struggle for the South Dakota mountains. By the 1760s, the Cheyenne controlled the Black Hills, but the Lakota warriors launched fierce raids into Cheyenne territory due to their desire for territorial expansion and the pursuit of power. A less resistant population in the plains further encouraged the Lakota to capitalize on the opportunity for expansion through forceful action. These raids were also a strategy to weaken the Cheyenne and pave the way for the Lakota's influence and control in the region. The Cheyenne, despite their warrior reputation, faced devastating European pandemics alongside Lakota attacks. As illness weakened the Cheyenne, the Lakota capitalized and pushed them out, eventually claiming the Black Hills by 1776, the year the USA declared independence. A century prior, the Lakota's ancestors were refugees, but now they stood as conquerors, wielding power in the West with control over the Black Hills and victory over rivals. Yet, an impending shift loomed. A European land deal set the stage for a fierce conflict between the Lakota and their ultimate foe, the United States. In 1803, after years of warfare that solidified their dominance, the Lakota faced a new challenge, the rapidly ascending United States. Despite their triumphs, their supremacy would be tested by the emerging Eastern power. The brewing conflict started in France, where Emperor Napoleon's financial struggles prompted the sale of the Louisiana Territory to the United States, expanding its land significantly. This marked the start of intense expansion. The initial encounter between the Lakota and Americans occurred when explorers Lewis and Clark entered Lakota territory in 1804. To understand the newly acquired land, Lewis and Clark surveyed it due to limited knowledge about its inhabitants. Although the Lakota welcomed them warmly, there was a rapid and shared emergence of hostility between the two groups. The Lakota perceived the Americans as ignorant and aggressive, while Clark derogatorily described them as the vilest miscreants of the savage race. This challenging beginning set the stage for an increasingly hostile relationship between the Lakota and the United States. The United States wanted more land, and the Lakota were living where they wanted to expand. In the 1800s, the U.S. grew by taking land from Spain and Great Britain. People from the U.S. going to Oregon passed through Lakota territory, hunting many buffalo and causing fights with the Lakota. The Lakota clashed with these people on their way to Oregon. By 1845, the U.S. sent soldiers to scare the Lakota into not attacking those going to Oregon. Red Cloud and other Lakota warriors weren't frightened by the show of force. The Lakota warriors were prepared to engage in battle if the Americans sought confrontation. But the U.S. couldn't start a war on the plains because they were already at war with Mexico in 1846. They won and got more land in California and the Southwest. After that, the U.S. sent experienced soldiers to the West and started getting involved in local matters. In 1851, they tried to stop fights between Native Americans and immigrants by making borders. In an attempt to establish terms, influential leaders from various nations gathered at Fort Laramie. Among them was the Lakota, represented by Chief Conquering Bear. The agreement allowed Americans to construct roads and forts on indigenous land, providing goods and money, and relinquishing territorial claims. However, this agreement didn't represent all Lakota, as other leaders quickly broke the treaty by attacking Arikara, Cheyenne, and Arapaho groups. Faced with diplomatic failure, the Americans opted for dominance through force in the West, waiting for an opportune reason. That reason emerged when a dispute arose between Mormon settlers and the Lakota over a slain cow. Outraged, the cow's owner reported to Fort Laramie. Conquering Bear tried to settle by offering his horse as compensation, but the Americans were unsatisfied. The next day, 30 soldiers marched to the Lakota camp, demanding the cow's killer. When Conquering Bear refused, violence erupted. The Americans opened fire, and he was killed. Such conflicts, centered around individual killings or animal deaths, were common during the settlement process. Warriors led by Red Cloud struck down those who tried to escape, leading to the event that was later named the Grattan Massacre. This led to the American Army's ruthless attack, a revenge on the Lakota community at Blue Water Creek on September 3, 1855, where more than 80 men, women, and children were killed. Unlike modern military rules of engagement, there were no boundaries then, allowing extreme violence. The brutality shocked Lakota leaders into seeking a ceasefire, ending hopes for peaceful coexistence. Although a truce was established with the Lakota, the Americans still faced opposition to their Western goals. From 1860 to 1864, they fought with various Native American groups, including the Shoshone, Dakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho. Despite their advanced weaponry, the Americans strained their resources. In 1863, the situation worsened as the Army fought the Lakota and their allies along the Bozeman Trail over U.S. forts built to protect miners traveling along the trail. For mutual survival, the Lakota set aside differences with the Cheyenne and Arapaho to unity against the common threat posted by the Americans. On July 26, 1865, a force of 3,000 Allied warriors attacked and overwhelmed the American garrison at Platte River Bridge, successfully cutting off the Bozeman Trail. The U.S. government's response was to deploy 2,500 troops with the aim of reopening the route. However, battling a highly mobile adversary on their own turf posed challenges. Led by Oglala chief Red Cloud, the Lakota warriors employed a strategic approach, avoiding direct confrontations. Instead, they launched ambushes on patrols and attacked wagon trains leaving the fort, using a devastating guerrilla tactic. This approach allowed them to effectively counter the American forces by taking advantage of their familiarity with the terrain and ability to strike swiftly and unpredictably. After months of intense battles, the situation reached a critical point with a violent clash near Fort Phil Kearny in Wyoming. Captain William Fetterman led 81 soldiers on a rescue mission, but it proved disastrous. Falling for a trap set by Crazy Horse, they were ambushed by a large Lakota force under Red Cloud. In a mere 20 minutes, all American troops were killed. Their bodies were left mutilated and exposed, conveying a message from Red Cloud to Washington: respect our land or face a relentless war. Although it took 2 years, Washington eventually heeded the message. In 1868, they invited Lakota representatives to Fort Laramie and signed a treaty recognizing their claims to the Great Sioux Reservation. However, a decade later, the discovery of gold in the Black Hills led the U.S. to disregard the treaty and march westward, setting the stage for further conflict. The war that followed spelled the end of indigenous resistance on the Great Plains. Settlers and miners faced attacks. Figures like Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer led military action. General Philip Sheridan advocated killing the buffalo to deprive the indigenous people of their resources. From 1860 onwards, the Lakota, Arapaho, and Northern Cheyenne formed alliances and engaged in warfare. They managed to thwart General George Crook at the Battle of the Rosebud, preventing his attack on their camp. A week later, they triumphed over the U.S. 7th Cavalry at the Battle of the Greasy Grass, held within the Crow Indian Reservation's 1868 boundary. Chief Crazy Horse led the combined forces, defeating Custer and his battalion in the Battle of the Little Bighorn. In this clash, they killed 258 soldiers and inflicted over 50% casualties on the regiment. The Lakota and their allies' triumph over the U.S. Army was short-lived. The U.S. Congress allocated funds to bolster the Army by 2,500 soldiers. With increased strength, the U.S. Army emerged victorious over the Lakota groups through a series of battles, ultimately concluding the Great Sioux War in 1877. Following this, the Lakota were constrained to reservations, restricted from hunting buffalo beyond these lands, and compelled to rely on government-provided food. In 1877, certain Lakota bands agreed to a treaty that handed over the Black Hills to the United States. However, this treaty's nature and approval stirred controversy. The extent of support among Lakota leaders for this treaty remains disputed as struggles persisted in the Black Hills. The Lakota population, estimated at 8,500 in 1805, grew steadily and reached 16,110 in 1881, one of the few Native American tribes to increase in population in the 19th century. However, the number of Lakota has risen to more than 170,000 in 2010, of whom about 2,000 still speak the Lakota language. As the challenging journey of the Lakota people unfolded, the echoes of their struggles still reverberate through history. Their fierce resilience and enduring spirit stand as a testament to the strength of indigenous communities across the globe. The Lakota story is a reminder that history's pages are often written in blood, sweat, and determination. Thanks for watching this video. Don't miss out on our upcoming episodes that shed light on the untold chapters of history. Remember to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to stay connected and be the first to witness these captivating narratives.